Okay, 1 minute. Are we ready to go live, Alberto?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, just a few seconds. Can we start, Professor Marcelo? Okay, it's 3 o'clock, so we're going to start. So let's see. Thank you everybody for coming today. Welcome everyone. My name is Natalia Roldan, and together with Luis Alberto, we are going to be chairing today this block of sessions. We are live right now on our Facebook fan page so that everybody can see us. So we're going to start with our first presenter for today. We welcome to our first presentation of the blog of concurrent sessions. We also welcome the audience who is following us through our fan page. Please remember to mute your microphones and turn off the cameras during the presentations. Welcome, Professor Marcelo Andrade.
Thank you.
Who is presenting today about a speak methodology, promoting listening and speaking skills outside the classroom, from Universidad Austral de Chile. So we'd like to remind the presenter that it's necessary to stick to the 20 minutes, and at the end of the sessions, there will be 7 minutes of questions and answers, okay? Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me thank you all for coming to my talk today. In this presentation, I would like to give you an overview of a pedagogical proposal whose purpose is to develop listening and speaking skills to perform different communicative tasks. The name of this sorry, the name of this methodology is SPEAK, which stands for the initials that refer to each stage in the process: scaffolding, private practice, evaluation, application, and knowledge or results. I'll explain these steps in a few minutes, but first, let me tell you about the context in which this methodology emerged. This was part of a teaching innovation project with civil industrial engineering students at Universidad Austral de Chile in Puerto Montt. The students had basic level of English, namely is A1 and A2 from the Common European Framework. And sorry. Well, since we don't live in an EFL context, meaning that we don't have an English around, our students do not usually practice their English outside the classroom. And in a 90-minute class, they don't talk as much as we as teachers would like. Even if they speak the whole class, it wouldn't be enough because that normally happens just twice a week, right? So having a web platform available for students, there's a possibility for both sending audiovisual resources to guide the students' learning process and receiving podcasts made by the students themselves to assess their oral performance. Now, to come up with this methodology, I combined two theories. The first one is called the action-oriented approach, which is proposed by the Common European Framework of Reference, and which views language learners as social actors who have tasks to accomplish. And these tasks are purposeful acts set in a context that students could face in everyday life. and in a variety of situations, rather than their ability to complete grammar quizzes on verbs. Examples of these situations include offering an apology, greetings, requests, complaints, invitations, compliments, or refusal. In some, students learn how to get something done, right? And the other theory is the covered rehearsal model, which is a learning strategy usually used by successful learners, which consists in practicing English out loud when you are alone, which is like equivalent to a private practice, right? Now, it refers to the time we spend talking to ourselves in the target language, listening to articulations, evaluating the accuracy and fluency of our language use, and also when we examine the use of the language rules that we know, and also the examples that we have heard. Now, according to the author, Wayne Dickinson, our time spent in cover rehearsal is language teaching and language learning time. Now, in the process of this methodology, there are 5 steps, as I mentioned before, and the first of which is scaffolding. So I'm going to refer to each of these steps now. In relation to scaffolding, the teacher has to define a learning outcome, and based on that learning outcome, the teacher must set a communicative task. For example, describing a city, giving directions, it could be describing a family, for example. So the students must do the task in a certain time. And for that, the teacher must design a handout or a document or a video with the main language aspects to be included in the task. The important thing about this material that the teacher sends the students is the recording. So I think the teacher must send a recording which demonstrates the use of language and models the task. For the task, for example, if the teacher wants his or her students to describe a city, I think that this worksheet or handout should include a model or an example of how a city is described, of course, and also with a recording that students can hear and to have a model of the vocabulary to be used, for example. So, and the students listen to the material and study the language aspects to perform the task, okay? Now, the second step is the private practice, which, as I said before, corresponds to the covered rehearsal model, which focuses on listening and speaking. And this strategy states the following steps. First, the student has to find privacy, so a quiet place where to perform aloud. So once the student has the model, he has to answer the question to the task and monitor the performance. Then they have to compare the performance with the model and to change the performance to match the model if there are any changes. Now, practice changed performance allowed until fluent. So they have to practice until he or she becomes fluent. Okay. So listening, the listening skill is important in that step. Then evaluation comes. Students answer the communicative task, record their answers, and send their file to the teacher. Right. This has to be in a web platform so that they communicate with the teacher through a web platform. The teacher listens to the students' podcasts and sends them a detailed feedback about 4 aspects of their performance: grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and organization and extent of their ideas. Okay. Now, up to here, this is what we normally do when we give, or every teacher gives a task to the students. They normally follow these steps, like they give the materials, they practice, and normally they hand in, a task and it's evaluated. So this is like the same as all the teachers normally do. Now, what is new perhaps is what comes next, because there's a next step which is called application, and Okay. Sorry. In this step, students will receive feedback from the teacher, as I said before. They receive feedback on 4 aspects, detailed feedback, for example, about the grammatical structures or mispronounced words, for example. And then they have to study the correction for a new recording. So normally, what we do is just to mark the tasks at the end of the 3rd step. But this is like an additional step in which the first one is formative and the second recording is marked. So they must record their answers to the task in front of the teachers without their notes and using prompts. So for example, I'm going to show you like example for this. Okay, just a minute. Okay, for example, this. If I ask, for example, my students to, in the first recording, to talk about their families, they would prepare the material and prepare the answer. I'm going to write their answer to the task, and they will have time to practice. But in this second step, second recording, the teacher must provide like prompts like this, for example, so that they, after listening the material and studying the material, they have to provide like the correct answers to this. So they are expected to use the vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation studied for a new task. And then the second task or recording is evaluated. So after that, the teacher assesses the student's performance again and gives them the results. Then a new cycle starts with a new topic and task, as you can see here. So once you complete these 5 steps with a topic, for example, or a task, like describing a city or any other task that I mentioned, they have to start like a new topic. And then there's like a cycle, right? Well, I applied this, and I'll tell you now about the results I got from a project. As I said before, this was a teaching innovation project, and I tried this with some students, 21 students, as you can see in the graph. And for this, I used the Common European Framework of Reference in order to set the criteria or descriptors for the different types of performance. Now, as you can see, if they got number 1, I also had a pre-test and a post-test, and I make a diagnostic test at the beginning so as to see in each of the topics that I taught, to see the vocabulary and all the aspects I mentioned present in the students. And I realized that, as you can see here, some of them were in 1, which was like a frequent mispronunciation of familiar words. And then some of them were in number 2, as you can see. That is, that they mispronounce some familiar words. Little effort is required by the listener to understand the message, etc. So I moved from A1 to B1 in this scale, right? Number 3 is equivalent to that some individual sounds are mispronounced, but they do not interfere with the message, etc. So there is a progression here, as you can see. Now, according to this, at the beginning of the project, students mispronounced several high-frequency words, and a little effort was required to understand their messages. Specifically, 50% of the students scored 1 or 2 points in the diagnostic test and eventually managed to reach 3 points in the assessment scale. This means that eventually their errors were minimal and they did not interfere with the message. Okay. Now, in relation to grammatical accuracy, also these were taken from the criteria on the CEFR. And what I could notice in relation to the results is that 62% of the participants who initially got a low score in the use of grammatical structures were able to use, although inconsistently, certain correct patterns in their utterances. Those who had already accomplished this at the beginning of the project could eventually build correct sentences almost all the time. Then, in relation to vocabulary use, again, as you can see here, some of them were low, and the results of these showed that 57% of the students increased their level of vocabulary and could use a range of words for the topic they were using. Okay. In addition, regarding the organization of ideas, the extension, coherence, and cohesion of the message, 47% of the participants increased the length of their messages and the use of linking words in relation to the pre-test. So this was after about 6 months, more or less. Well, it was along a year, but I had many results in relation to, or they increased in the different aspects. The advantages of this is that the private practice the learner has before answering the task is a key factor to improve pronunciation as well as confidence in using the language. The second advantage is that preparing the task also involves using the 4 language skills, listening to the teacher's recording, reading the material, writing the answer, and speaking aloud. Then the third advantage is that students can continue using the language outside the classroom, because this is done like in their autonomous learning time, and increasing at the same time their exposure as well as their autonomy as learners. The fourth advantage is that it allows students to be informed about their oral performance in detail so that they can improve in the following tasks, in the next tasks in the cycle. And this method provides the opportunity to try different communicative tasks by making use of a virtual learning environment, especially if there are no possibilities to have a face-to-face interaction, now as it is happening now as a result of the lockdown period in different areas. Okay, now this is like a summary of the framework that I use, just to put all the elements in a diagram. Here I have like the Common European Framework of Reference in the outer circles, a virtual learning environment, which is needed for these methodology. And here we have on the other hand, the language content. So if you combine the SEFR and the language contents, you have the communicative tasks. And here in the intersection of the SEFR and the virtual learning environment, you have the possibility to assess the podcasts. And also here, if we combine these, we have the scaffolding strategies, which are like the key factor for the students' learning process, say. Now, I have applied this methodology in many of my classes after the project finished, and students always value the formative stage of it, since the scaffolding phase makes learning easier and they can be better prepared for the final task. And that preparation involves the practice they need outside the classroom. If you would like to apply these, I suggest that you do with small groups, since it takes a long time. Perhaps in a workshop, which is additional to the class, could work well. And definitely the context in which we are now makes a great opportunity to implement this and can make students use their English orally. So thanks. I think that's my presentation. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Andrade. Yes, we are going to encourage our audience. Please feel free to turn your cameras on and open your microphones if you have any questions for the presenter. Also, you can use the reaction features in Zoom or use the chat. So please, go ahead. Any questions from the audience? Jessica, we have a question in the chat from Jessica. Let me see. Does this work as an action research?
Yeah, definitely, yes, I think, because you can put this into, you can put this in, implement this methodology and see the results. You can also, because it also, it's supposed to encourage like an impact on the students. So you can see how interfering or making an intervention with the students during the year, you can have a result and see, and you can measure the results of each of the aspects as I did. So I think what I did was um, exactly that in action research, really.
Actually, we have another question from Jessica. She asks, can this be done with another teacher and work collaboratively?
Yeah, well, I have to say that this project that I made was done with another teacher also. So we did work like that. So because sometimes the group of students is large, and we have to divide also like the analysis of the recordings that we make, because normally it takes a long time. So you can divide these. It could be as a research, and also or even sharing like a class or with different classes, or even in a workshop, as I said. So you can work collaboratively, not only teachers, but also students. What I did was individual, because I was like checking the individual performance of the students, but they could also make some other communicative tasks that involves, for example, the pair work. Like, for example, they could have an interview or something like that. Okay.
Actually, we have another question. I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. It says, what were the main challenges that students had to face when they were in application stage? Basically, the challenges were that many of the, well, you saw that some of the students did increase, in relation to the scriptors, they had an improvement. But the ones that didn't, it was because they didn't focus on the corrections I made, because I gave them like a lot of feedback, as I said before, in different areas, very detailed feedback. And the ones that took that really seriously did, or they apply those changes or the corrections in the application stage. The ones that didn't even consider my corrections or feedback, because some students took it really seriously and they really applied that in the application stage. Some of them didn't. So those were like the ones that perhaps remained the same, because as we could see, some of them didn't have improvements. So I think that they have to consider these, and as in every test, I think, students should consider the corrections of the teachers and the feedback to apply it in the next task. Basically that, I would say.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the questions that have that our audience had made. Do we have any questions, Luis, from the fan page?
No, we do not at this time.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience here at Zoom? Apparently not. So, well, Professor Andrade, thank you very much for your insightful presentation. We would also like to thank the audience for the questions. Our next presentation is, let me see. We invite you to our next presentation, which is top-down and bottom-up listening activities, an alternative to PWP activities, by Jessica Contreras-Álvarez, who is actually here also as part of the audience. Okay, so if you want to switch rooms, you can do it, or if you want to stay here until the next presentation starts, which is going to be at 4 sharp, you can stay here with us, okay? Professor Andrade, thank you again for your presentation.
Thanks.
You can stop if you want to stay. You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, I just to say thank you for the opportunity, and also thanks to the questions made by the audience. Okay, thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Okay, so now we have some minutes for you to change rooms if you want to. Alberto, can you please put the share the slide with the next presentation? Thank you. So we are going to start. Sorry, at 4. I said at 4 that we're going to start. I'm sorry. Our next presentation is at 3:30 with Jessica Contreras-Álvarez. Hi, Jessica. We can see you there. Hi, Jessica. Nice to meet you. My name is Natalia Roldan, and I'm here with Alberto Reyes. We are going to be the chairs of this session. So if you have any questions, any doubts, we're here for you to help you. You're mute.
Good. Hi, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for your help. And I have no questions. I think that everything is done and ready for the presentation in around 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
So if you want to turn your camera off or your microphone, you're
okay.
Good to do
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, we are 2 minutes away from the beginning of our next presentation. So, Jessica, you can share, you can start sharing your presentation if you want, so we
Yes.
can be ready in 2 minutes.
All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
We have
Okay, let
some.
me put it. There it is.
We have some attendees coming.
All right.
Okay, 1 minute and we start.
Perfect.
Okay, it's 3:30, so we're ready to go. Welcome to the last presentation, everybody. This is the end, the last presentation of this set of concurrent sessions. My name is Natalia Roldan, and together with Luis Alberto Reyes, we will be chairing this session. We remind the audience in Zoom that they need to mute their microphones and turn their cameras off during the presentation. Also, for the audience following us in our Facebook live transmission, do not forget to leave your comments, okay? So, we welcome Professor Jessica Contreras-Álvarez today. She is an independent researcher, and she will be presenting today about top-down and bottom-up listening activities, an alternative to PWP activities. So let me see any other information. I don't think so. Oh, remember that when Jessica finishes her presentation, we will have a 7-minute sessions for question and answer. Okay. Okay, Jessica, you may start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And I'm very pleased and happy to be here. Despite the pandemic situation we are living in, it's a pleasure for me to present today a proposal that was born thanks to my experience as a supervisor in professional practicum. So you may be wondering, what does PWP mean? And it means pre, while, and post activities. The typical pre-activities, while activities, and post-activities that we do when we practice listening in a classroom. So these activities, for me, are a little bit like traditional, and every single teacher I have supervised and observed so far, they usually do the pre, the while, and the post activities, but they forget that there are other strategies that we can use, and those are the top down and the bottom up. So I'm going to tell you about the way I used to teach my students how to practice these strategies in a classroom. So the pre, the while, and the post activities, are useful, yes, but they are not really challenging. Okay, so I felt that they focus mainly in the vocabulary and structures, it means grammar. And we used to see the teachers always using audios and few videos. But that is not like authentic material. And what we teachers here in Chile and around the world are asked is to promote communication. Okay, so it's not very challenging at all for students. So there is not a lot of variation among the activities proposed by the teachers, because always in the pre, I insist, this is based on my experience, all the activities that teachers and student teachers used for the pre-activities or phase was pictures related to vocabulary. Okay, so the connection was the picture that tried to explain the vocabulary that we were going to listen. The while activities usually fill in the blanks because students should do something while they are listening. And fill in the blanks is the fastest. And the post usually comprehension questions or checking information. But those comprehension questions were related to like cut and paste. So it's like, what is the name of, what did she say with, you know? So it was more like an activity that was about yes or no. Did you listen correctly? Understood yes or no? So it was not very, very like challenging because you have few alternatives. So for me, it was a little bit boring. So why this new strategy then? Because of my experience, as I said before, as a professional, there is a tilde that should not be there. As a professional practicum supervisor, I wanted to make my students feel more engaged in the class. I want to challenge my students so they can challenge their students later. And because I also wanted to listen to my students, because this is not a monologue. And when you practice pre, while, and post, usually the answers are just connected to the listening itself and not about sometimes the opinion. And sometimes students say, if I don't have the answer, I cannot ask or whatever. So it was like a problem according, I insist, my experience. And because I wanted to have a class made by everyone in the classroom, not just, as I said before, a monologue done by the teacher. Okay, so what is the issue then when listening? So I know that you have heard this during the whole presentations probably, but it is super important that we never forget that listening comprehension requires decoding the information, and that information is mixed, contaminated, we can say, with a lot of elements from the environment. For example, noises. That is authentic communication, right? So when we listen usually at school, it's something that has been prepared. So it's not like with an idiomatic expression, it's not like real English. So students, when they travel abroad and they watch TV, for example, they say, I understand not at all. I cannot understand. I don't understand I understand nothing. So they feel frustrated and they feel that probably they have lost their time, because what we do is decoding the linguistic input, and we have to do it very fast, and besides we have to do it accurately, otherwise we are not going to respond accordingly, you know. So listening in that sense is very similar to reading. So you need something that is called the background, and we are going to talk about that later, and we have to activate our background. Okay, so the common problem, according to Field in 2008, in a very interesting article that he wrote, is that for students to understand, the connected speech is the problem, and connected speech that is in authentic material, in real situation, is even more complicated. Okay, so why is it important that teachers practice and develop listening in their students? Because, as I said before, we are teaching a language with a purpose. And I would say that most of people that try to learn a language, start learning a language, they do it because they want to communicate. So when we say, I know English, I speak German, I can speak a little Italian, that means that you can have a kind of communication with other people. You can interact with other people. So to know a language is not just reading, but communication. And communication can be done orally or in a written way. In other words, the comprehension takes place when you decode successfully. This is a very important word, successfully, accurately, okay, the input, and we integrate that linguistic input to our students, his or her knowledge system. Okay, so we need to connect the listening with our knowledge system. If we forget about the knowledge system, what we know about something, then we cannot decode the input, okay? And why in this situation, these days, in this situation we are living, it is particularly complicated because something that is super, super simple. Because listening, different from reading, requires observation and requires body language. Yeah, and that way is going to, body language is going to help us to understand. So the interpretation is going to be easier. Okay, so it is super complicated to understand listening fully without looking at the person. Okay, so audios, they are okay, but if we see the person, it's different. In my very personal opinion, I don't know if you agree with me or if this happens to you too, but when I am in classes, if I don't see the teacher, I don't understand the explanation. So I have to see the teacher. And when it's someone, when there is someone in front of me, I have to do this because I have to see the teacher. I have to see what he's saying, what she is saying. You know what I mean? So I need observation. And what it is so complicated these days, because our students, when we have these kind of classes, they do not turn on their cameras. So we cannot see this body language, you know? So for the next, the past and the future and tomorrow, we don't see this body language in our classes. So it is complicated. Remember the great Penny Orr, she said that listening comprehension practice in the classroom, it's where the students should learn to function successfully in real life listening situations. This is super, super important. So real English, real language, real life situations is not the same the one we listen in the audios. It's obvious, okay? So the question is then, how can we, teachers, help? Super simple, listening. It may be obvious, but remember that when we have teachers, my dear teachers, remember that when we have a conversation or when we listen to a conversation, we get what the speaker wants to give us. What are you talking about? It means that we have to process the messages, the phrases, the idioms, the words, whatever, the sounds as they come. And we have, as listeners, we have to deal super quickly and solve this situation connected to the speaker's accent, the rhythm, the vocabulary, the grammar that probably is not good enough, and the noise around the conversation. When you are in a public bus, you listen to somebody else's conversation, but you also listen to the street noise and somebody else's conversations over there. You know what I mean? And also the accent. Now here in this conference, it's a very big surprise for me, and I'm super happy that I can hear different accents, people from Bangladesh, people from Peru, people from different parts of the world, different countries. And that is super, super important to understand different accents because we don't have the same accents. Now, think about this. This is magnified in second language acquisition. That is what we do. Oh my God, I'm going to get crazy. No, not yet, because luckily we have some strategies and we have an alternative to the pre, while, and post. And this is what I'm going to present today. The top-down activities or strategies use our background knowledge, okay, to understand the message. What does it mean? They use everything we know about grammar, vocabulary, language, grammar. I said grammar, vocabulary, phonology, phonetics, etc., etc., etc. Okay. And you may say, background knowledge, really? Yes, background knowledge. It is the context, it is the situation, the topic, or what we call the context, what it's after and before the message, yeah? And also body language. Don't forget about body language. It is super, super important. The top-down activities go from the general to the specific. Probably you know this and you remember, right? And we can have activities like listening for the main or the core idea, yeah? We can have a prediction game in groups. For elementary level, I use a lot drawing inferences and obviously summarizing, okay? The top-down activities or strategy put the emphasis on the content so students can play and predict the situation or the content or the topic, okay? And they can do it beforehand. And we can help them using keywords or pictures, but not pictures connected to the vocabulary we are going to use, but probably the content, okay? So they can have a general idea because we go, remember, from the general to specific, okay? Some examples of top-down activities using videos, because that is what we are using right now. You can watch a video without sound and predict the content, the topic, just by reading the body language. So they are moving their hands, they are moving their bodies. And so tell me what's going on, okay? From the general to the specific, but they are not listening. No, really? They are listening each other, okay? Listen to the response or the answer someone gives and create and attempt the question. So you put the video and someone answers something. Yes, you know what? You know, and you create the question. So what do you think may be the question? And that becomes a very good exercise for practicing grammar too. You can watch a video and guess the relationship the characters may have just by body language reading, the gesture, the surroundings, etc. So you can use this as you can use a video without listening something that you are going to use later, but the listening is not going to come from probably the video, but it's coming from the students' interactions, okay? So let's see here an example. I hope this works. Let me see. All right, let me see. I hope this, please, someone tells me, someone please, can you hear?
Not here, but we can see.
Okay, so this is a video. This is a video where you can see a lot of movies. As you may see here, it's about, so you can ask your students different questions from the video. And you have a lot of videos here too. And you can use this because this is what you can see when you go to the States, for example, all right? This is real English, okay? So some examples, you can check this later, is the best, 10 best Super Bowl commercials 2020. So you can check this later, okay? And we can have here some questions. For example, who are they? Probably they have watched all these movies. What do they have in common? Means this is not about listening, my students used to say. And I say, yes, because you are listening to your classmates, your students. So it is listening, okay? What do they have in common? And that is real listening and real English too. What are their names? Probably they know. Were they named out loud? And here we are listening to the video because they can say, ah, yes, yes, the lady said the name of the second boy or whatever, you know? How many idioms did the woman say? You can watch the video later. Can you recall one of them? So you can check listening more than comprehension. It's if they are paying attention, they are listening, because the other thing is here, you know that better than me probably, you know? What does home mean to Aquaman? Because Aquaman in one of the commercials, he's saying the meaning of home for him. So you have to be very prepared, and you have to recall. You don't have to say every single word, just exactly what he said. Okay, good. Here you have another video that, because of the time, probably we will not be able to watch. Here, Jimmy Fallon, probably you know Jimmy Fallon, Real English, in a sitcom from the 90s. So you can ask questions, no audio, just image. For example, this one. What does the blonde young man take too long to go downstairs? Another questions. What are the boys talking about, etc., etc. Questions and questions. You know what I mean? Then you have the bottom-up activities, and they go from the specific to the general. Okay, but these are text-based. Here we are going to rely on the message as such. Okay, the grammar, there is one missing M, and the grammar that creates meaning. Okay, we're going to pay attention to the details and the segments. We're going to focus our attention on structures and forms. Okay, and we are going to use this strategy later for an academic writing, for example. Okay, some ideas for you to use the bottom-up activities. You can watch a forecast video and get important and key information, like what's going on in Talcahuano, what is going to happen in Arica, what's the temperature for tomorrow in Quillota, etc. Okay, advertisement, as we watched before, we can talk about numbers or spelling the words, because sometimes it says call 149, help me please, you know, so we can play with that too with our students. Recipes with countables and uncountable nouns, that's super important. Quantifiers, how much we have to put, how much flour or sugar we have to put for making a cake, you know. And we can also use receiving a phone call and take a message. This is real authentic material. So here we have an example that, because of the time, we're going to not be able to watch. And we have some questions. What's the direction? The weather is moving. What does the man say about the basketballs? You are going to check this information if you obviously watch the video. Okay. Recipes. Martha Stewart, super useful. She has helped me, she doesn't know, but she has helped me a lot with the classes when I used to teach countable and uncountable nouns. Some questions: how much butter must you put in? How many lemons we will use? What does she use lemon juice for, etc. So this information is in a context, is in a conversation. So it's not like, okay, pay attention, now I'm going to say how many lemons I'm going to use, you know? So as a conclusion, successfully listening depends on the combination, on the ability that we develop in our students to combine these two processes, the top down and the bottom up, the general to specific, the specific to general, okay? And we hopefully don't use isolated exercises. And we as teachers should learn to identify which strategy, the top down or the bottom up, we can see our students have developed, or they use the most, or they use better, not probably the most, but they are better at having the general idea or identifying little details. And then we can mix our students, the ones that are better in bottom up with the ones that are not that good in the bottom up. We can mix them and we can help them to develop these two processes in their minds. Why? Because that is the way we are going to have listeners that can have a conversation, that can understand the context, the topic, the grammar, and can have a real conversation. Okay, and that is obviously our goal. So thank you for listening. There you have my email if you want some help or you want a PPT or more ideas. feel free, please, to contact me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica Contreras. This has been a very interesting presentation. Now we're going to have a couple of minutes in case there are any questions from the audience. Please feel free to turn your cameras and open your microphones if you have any questions, or you can use the Zoom features to react also, or use the chat. So are there any questions?
I wanted to ask something.
Okay.
Yes,
You mentioned drawing inferences activities with students at elementary level. And how does that work? Is it in Spanish, in English?
Well, my experience is two things. The university where I used to work, the program where I used to work, they said everything in English, everything in English. But the thing is that I used to tell my students during their professional practicum, don't try not to cut the communication, the flow. You know what I mean? So what I used to recommend my students, and if you give me the possibility, I can recommend you to do this in Spanish or in English. It doesn't matter. If you give the possibility your students to communicate, you know what I mean? And to be exposed to the language. If they answer in Spanish because they are too little, I don't know, segundo básico, for example, second grade, elementary level, they can probably not be able to communicate in English, but you can speak in English. So you are going to expose those little kids to language, and that is going to be super helpful for them. So it has worked with my students. Actually, the drawing, the predictions, what's going to happen next, it has helped a lot. One of my students, for example, used to use the video, just the audio, and then she said, now you are going to draw the way the girl looks like. So some of them imagined the girl as a blonde girl or a dark skin, etc., according to their experience. And then they saw it, they said, I knew it. And they saw the image and they listened, and I knew it, I la chunté, they said, you know, and they are super, super happy when they have the possibility to interact this way. So that's why I say, listen. So listening is about listening. Sometimes we teachers are very teacher-centered. We say, no, my classes are student-centered. Really? So I would say, listen to your students. If they want to communicate because they cannot in English, they want to say it in Spanish, just do it. And then you can translate that into English. So you are helping them in one way or another. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome, very welcome.
Thank you. Luis, Alberto, do we have any questions from the fan page?
No, we do not at the moment.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience here? Thank you very much, says Claudia Aliaga. And well, we are in time to finish and to go to our break. So thank you again, Jessica, for your very engaging presentation. We would also like to thank the audience for the questions. With this presentation, we finish our second block of the presentations for today. So enjoy your rest of the afternoon, and we will see you again tomorrow for the second part of this this day of conferences. Please remember that there are some presentations on our YouTube channel. In the chat, you will be you can have access directly to those videos. So we have wonderful classroom-based listening research videos. So we hope their understanding work proves useful for your future practice. You can watch them during the coffee break, and as I said, the links are in the chat. Thank you again, Jessica.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Thank you, everybody, for participating today.
Thank you. Take care.
See you.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Alberto, you can go offline of Facebook.